Well, everyone, welcome to another episode of Living on Music with Steve Hauk. This is one of those very special shows that I'm really excited to have. I haven't had a lot. I'm trying to think if I've had more than one or two photographers, and especially music photographers, rock and roll especially, that are on Living on Music. And Steve Schneider has turned a fondness for rock and roll, as it was written, into this lifetime of what is called concert documentation. I love the one thing it says: the pictures are frozen and revealing in dramatic action, and that is the essence of rock and roll photography in so many ways. The list goes on. We'll talk about some of the people that Steve has photographed, and also a wonderful relationship with the Grateful Dead, which is very exciting. He's also got a new book, and it's called The First Three Songs. And when I found out why it's named like that, Steve, I love that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Living on Music, Steve Schneider.
Hi, thank you for having me, Steve.
How are you, man? Good to see you.
Hey, surviving this beautiful weather here in Seattle.
Oh, I bet. And that's where you are. That's where Steve is. He's out in Seattle and has been for a long time. We'll talk about his getting out there and things, excelling too for his career. But Steve, you're involved in going out and shooting live music a lot of the time. And how have you adapted over the last 2 years? I know part of it gave you an ability to kind of foster the beginning of your book, but how have you been dealing with the last 2 years as a kind of an active photographer?
Well, kind of basically semi-retired, because my bread and butter have always been conventions and event work, and that dried up. And 2020 is when I said, hey, I got nothing else to do. So I spent most of the year just going through old images.
Oh, that's great.
And that took a long time to reorganize everything, because my filing system was a little behind the times.
Right.
Negatives and slides are there in this bag, that bag.
Yep.
What show was it?
Oh,
I like digital now.
Right. And was this the beginning of you wanting to put out what turned out to be the first three songs? Or were you just kind of doing more? Because a lot of people during this, musicians too, spent time in the basements and kind of resurging and rearranging all of their kind of music or photographs. Were you hell bent on wanting to do a book?
Yeah, I've been selling my images to friends, and I have a gallery owner here in town that selling my images for a few years. And then I kept wanting to do a book, and I just, money came through, so I didn't have to do any Kickstarter or anything.
Great.
And I just self-published it, and I'm just trying to sell it.
Oh, no. Well, that's fantastic. And it is a piece of work. It is one of those pieces of, well, as a music fan for 45 plus years, I've become a music writer. I've become a musician. I've done some other things. I've taken some neat pictures at shows, but I'm no Steve Schneider, and I'm not one of these unbelievable people. I love the fact that you have put this together. And I love the fact that it's called The First Three Songs. And, when I heard that, I'm like, yep, that makes sense. How is the title First Three Songs come about for this amazing book?
Well, basically, when you get a press access, that's what you get. Right. The first three songs, they escort you in, escort you out.
Right.
Sometimes if you have a ticket for the show, they make you take your gear out and you come back in without your gear and see the show.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You'll laugh at this because I knew you were coming on. And one of my memories that popped up was 5 years ago at the Merriweather Post Pavilion, which is right outside of DC, great venue. And I interviewed Cindy Santana, Cindy Blackman Santana, Carlos's wife. And I was going to go meet her and hopefully meet him, which would have been one of my great moments as a journalist and as a man, because I love him. Well, yeah. I got pushed aside because NBC News came in and interviewed them. So they said, we'll see you some other time. But they put me in the photo pit. And I got the first three songs with Carlos, and not a professional photographer, but a music fan and a guy who loves it, was able to capture some wonderful shots of Carlos. It must be, what was the behind the scene for you doing this book? How did you pick the pictures? It was just your favorites, the ones that you thought of from that you loved when they were taken?
Well, I had a Bob Minkin who was down in Novato,
Right.
who's published a couple books, did the design work. So we would just start the thoughts about it. Well, it's 5 decades worth of rock and roll.
Oh,
So we just put an order of decades, 70, 80, 90. And inside each decade, we kind of decided which pictures to use.
right.
I sent him down a lot of photos. And then we kind of talked about it, went over it, and said, I like this one, but I don't like that one. I want that one, no, anyway, kind of thing. And that's why we organize it as decades. And it's not in order in a decade, it's just basically the way it fit.
Right.
But definitely 70s, 80s, 90s. And the book just tells you who the band is and the venue and the date.
Wow. And you to capture an artist, and these are the top artists in the world. And again, as a rock fan from ever, when I looked at your list of people, it's just across the swath of people I love. And what was the kind of the genesis, the focus when you would take pictures of some of these people? What are you trying to capture? Their essence, who they are, just a kind of a cool pose. What was the best way to define how you get your best pictures and want to come away with the best pictures?
Well, I guess just get there, shoot, and hopefully the artist will turn to you and smile,
Right.
or he'll jump in the air or lift his foot off. A lot of artists for the first 3 songs are just kind of like standing there, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But then you got Carlos, who he's so animated right off the bat.
Exactly.
Same with Neil Young and
Yeah.
Nirvana. Jerry sometimes, depends on how he feels, but in Green Day, they were pretty animated.
Oh,
You just-
yes.
You just take what they give you because you only got 3 songs and you've just got to, the old days you would keep shooting and spin film out, put new film back in.
Right.
Now digital, you just have one long card and don't worry about it.
Exactly. Taking the pictures. I remember I was a huge Southern rock fan, and I remember taking pictures of bands like the Outlaws and Molly Hatchet and things like that. And they'd all get together, all 4 in a row at the end and crank, and you'd be clicking away, and loved capturing it. But boy, have you done a spectacular job. I think, first 3 songs, it must feel good to get it all out, doesn't it?
Oh, it was definitely the day we got the 1,000 books delivered at home was like, oh, the timing was perfect. We just got back from 18 days in Europe,
Oh,
and the book came to my house like 3 days later, and it was actually about 2 weeks late. It was supposed to arrive while I was in Europe,
oh,
and I was glad it was late.
right. So you were there for the arrival. Yeah.
Well, we had to put the 1,000 books in my garage because no place to put it. I couldn't get a storage unit that I could secure in time for them to wheel them in, like, on a pallet jack. And,
Oh,
the gods were on our side, and they came home, and we put them in the garage and started selling them. And then I did move them to a storage unit for a while.
oh, good. What is the easiest way for people to access this book now, Steve?
My website is SchneiderPhotographyStore.com.
Yes, that'll be below you the entire show. So yeah, that's good to know for people. And again, I have a bookshelf downstairs that's a lot of bios, which I love. I've had a lot of guests that have written books about the Allman Brothers and Stevie Ray and other
Yeah.
people. But I love being able to see what you guys capture. You have been doing this for a long time. You were out of the 50s in Southern California.
Yep.
Did you start taking pictures as a little kid? Was that something?
Yeah, high school.
So it was in high school.
Yeah.
But what were you were you feeling like you're capturing stuff, or were you just kind of like, I am having fun taking pictures? What were you already
Mostly that, having
Yeah.
fun, learning a camera, learning what to do. And then I started traveling for about a year and a half, hauling sailboats across the country.
Whoa.
And so then I had my camera taking pictures of the country, and then
Oh,
got into rock and roll and said, this is fun. And back then it was easy to get your camera, and you just kind of walked it in, sneak it in or under your coat.
right. In the early 70s, you said you started taking concert photos. And
Early 70s, yeah.
shot a lot of shows around California. What were some of the early 70s bands you remember shooting in Southern California?
Well, Grateful Dead,
Oh.
Neil Young,
Right.
and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Wow. Was that when your Grateful Dead relationship began, or how did that happen later? Because it seems like you had an incredible run and with them on a number of different levels. I mean, what were some of the reasons, but did it begin then?
It began in probably 77,
Okay.
78.
Right.
Uh,
Before you moved to
Actually, no,
Seattle.
76. I ran into somehow I ran into Mickey Hart. That's right. I ran into Mickey Hart at a Santa Barbara concert, 77, and talked to him. And then I started sending him a bunch of pictures.
Oh,
And I
really?
got in his wife or girlfriend at the time, Geraldine Brandelius, said, "Hey, I like your stuff." I said, "Can I have photo passes?" I said, "Sure."
Oh,
And Jerry, the cover of Jerry was taken in 1978 on stage in Santa Barbara, and that's he's either smiling at me or smiling at Steve Parrish, saying, "Kick this body out." I was too close,
oh, that's hilarious. I
but
mean,
I got the film.
yeah, and the list of what you did with the Dead. I mean, you're there. It does say a little bit about being on some CD releases, being in some books. I mean, that takes it a little bit further than normal. That's pretty wonderful that you would be brought into their almost their family photographically.
Well, they basically wanted free pictures, and so us photographers would give them free pictures, and we get free CDs,
Oh, that's great.
and they spell your name right.
And you get credit.
The credit, yes, that's important when you're starting out.
Big time, and especially with a band like the Dead, which was
Yeah,
so instrumental, and stuff. The Time magazine, I love they used your shot of him at his last Seattle show.
yeah. It was a friend of mine who works for AP, and about 6 o'clock in the morning, I got the email with saying Jerry died, and I go, crap. Well, I said other things, but so I got on to do my stuff, and I sent it all to my agent in New York, SEPA Press, and about 2, 3 days later, they said SEPA bought the shot of Jerry. It was one of his last shows in Seattle. It was
Oh, that
94,
no,
the 95 show.
that's fantastic. I mean, what a nice, kind of thing to have in your back pocket of stuff you've done that your pictures were given to. You weren't always you were into rock and roll and starting to do shows, but you also worked for UPI, and that seemed to be a big turning point for you.
Well, yeah, the guys who were editors were really nice, and they were really calm, and they taught you right how they wanted it.
Right.
Plus, I was a Canon user, and he was a Canon user, so he had all the exotic lenses, and I got to use exotic lenses. And he was hired to cover. I was hired to cover events, and then that's just a way of learning how to shoot events.
Right. And so that was in, I guess, that began around the mid 80s for you in 83,
Yeah,
84.
mid '80s. Yeah.
You worked for them, you did some things with them, you did some stringing work. When did you go full on rock and roll at any time, full on music?
I was basically started back then when I would decide, like, hey, I want to go to this concert. Let's get a photo pass. Okay.
Right.
And it was basically fun because I wasn't making any money doing it. You don't get money, get $25, $30 a gig back then.
Right.
My bread and butter was shooting conventions and events in Seattle.
Oh, wow.
And
And
that's
that,
where you made your money so you can go have fun shooting concerts.
well, that's why now I understand a little bit more about, along with Neil Young and the Dead and the Stones, you got Nirvana, Soundgarden, Eddie Vedder, who I'm a huge fan of his. Was it fun to kind of do all these different genres as well? I mean, not genres, but different kinds of rock and roll.
Oh, definitely. Cause Nirvana, Pearl Jam, they were the newbies.
Yeah.
We've been around forever, and it's good to see how their fans reacted, and watching the crowd dancing or the crowd surfing was incredible.
Right.
And the music was good.
Right. Right. And
And
it
the
was.
access was good.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's good to know too. I mean, you got in there and anybody, again, Steve Schneider with the first three songs, which is the culmination of many years as far as I can see,
Over
of
50.
over 50 years of, some of the most stellar rock and rollers of all time. You can go to SchneiderPhotographyStore.com, which you've seen below, Steve. And again, Steve, congratulations on getting this book out, and thanks for being on Living on Music with me.
Well, thank you. It's
Sure.
been a pleasure, and people enjoy my book. It's been a labor of love. I may not get all my money back, but I got a few hundred books still sitting in my house to sell. So get on there and order. And right now, shipping is free.
Right. And do I see hand signed by Steve Schneider for
Of course.
some of them? Oh,
And
there
if
you
send
go.
me an email with the, I'll even personalize it.
Well, there you go. And I think if you're a rock and roll fan and you want to see some moments in rock and roll and have those right by your coffee table or self, go to, again, SchneiderPhotographyStore.com and pick up the first 3 songs. Steve Schneider, congratulations, man. Keep it going. Get out there and shoot a concert or 2 as you're going along here. Why not?
I'm ready to go. I got my new gear and going.
That's fantastic. Thanks, man. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Steve. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.